Hi, I'm Sam Walsh. I've been thinking about my dad today and the time 8 years ago when he died, and we were across the country, and we had known that his death was coming, but it was still very hard, and the grieving process, although it had already started, continued right into the time of our departure. I had carefully laid out my clothing, my funeral suit, in order that when the call came, we could just pack everything that hadn't been packed and go. And so we headed across the country, 3 days of travel, and arrived in New York State just that evening before the time of calling hours and celebration and funeral. Woke up the next morning to get ready and couldn't find my suit anywhere. I had left it back in New Mexico. And here it was, early in a country village where there was no possibility of getting to a clothing store, and I'm supposed to preach. What was I to do about all of that? Well, of course, we prayed. And we remembered that there was a used thrift store within the village of Margaretville, and we went down there early. The sign on the outside of the building said closed, and it would not be open at all that day. And as we started to walk away, I decided to look in the window, and I saw somebody in there. And I banged on the door, and I banged on the door, and I kept banging on the door, and then finally somebody opened. We explained the situation, how we had no proper clothes, and how my dad had died, and we wondered if perhaps they would just let us look around inside for a suit that might be possible. And so we looked, and we looked, and we didn't find anything that fit my size. And the lady started to help us too, and was very sympathetic to our situation, and looked at the clothing that had just come in, not but a few days ago. And there in the rack that had just come in was this shirt and this Nordstrom suit that fit me. Just fit, but it fit. And so I was able to preach at my dad's funeral in a respectable outfit, and to go through that time of mourning and loss, remembering that God had helped even in the time of grief, and that he was there even in times of loss. Still today, this suit and its shirt are a reminder that God provides for us in times of great need and in times of great grief. It has become for me what was in the Old Testament an Ebenezer, a stone of help. And this is a suit of help for me, and it's a reminder that God helps us in our great time of need. Where does that word Ebenezer come from? Of course, it's not from Charles Dickens and Ebenezer Scrooge. It came from the Bible, and the first part of the words, the Hebrew word for stone, eben, and then etzer, which is help. So we find out that in First Samuel, actually, chapter 7, we find out how it's used there. You see, the Israelites had been in great grief. They had walked away from the Lord, and they had been captives of the Philistines for 20 years. And finally, after that point, they started to repent, and they grieved, and they mourned, and they came together. And the prophet Samuel assembled them all at Mizpah, and they fasted and there confessed, "We have sinned against the Lord." And so they were in great grief, they were in great need. They had assembled for a peaceful purpose, but the Philistines, who were their captors, heard about it and thought they were there for war, to assemble for war. And the rulers of the Philistines came up to attack them. And when the Israelites heard it, they were afraid because of the Philistines. And they said to Samuel, "Do not stop crying out to the Lord our God for us, that he may rescue us from the hand of the Philistines." And they offered up a sacrifice, and Samuel called out to the Lord, and the Lord answered them. And that day the Lord thundered with loud thunder against the Philistines, and threw them into a panic, that they were routed before the Israelites. And the men of Israel rushed out from Mizpah and pursued the Philistines, slaughtering them all the way to a point below Beth-kar. And Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shen. He named it Ebenezer, saying, "Thus far has the Lord helped us." Stone of help, a time to remember in grief that the Lord helps us in a special time and provides supernatural help. You may be grieving today. You may be even experienced the loss, close loss of a relative, close loss of a friend, a loss or a mourning for our country, a mourning for those that have died through COVID or any grief. But you can also have an Ebenezer. You can have, or in my case, a suit of help. A reminder that in the time of great need and crying out to God and of grief, the Lord provides supernatural help. It's not just coincidence. The Lord is there because he loves you, and you can call upon him and find that he will help you.